my sweets, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, I'm Keisha. Welcome and thank you so much for stopping by. In this video, I will show you how I duped this $16 Kirklands Easter Tabletop Sign for less than $5 using Dollar Tree and other inexpensive supplies. Alright, let's get into it. A list of supplies I used is in the description box below. I began this project with a 5-gallon paint stick from Home Depot that I cut down to 18 inches. I paint the entire thing with Waverly chalk paint in white, then set it aside to dry. Here I have some scrap pieces of foam core board and poster board that I'm gluing together to give them more stability. Once I have them successfully attached together, I set them aside to dry. Here I have 2 Easter printouts that I made, and they are available in the description box if you would like to recreate this project. I prepare the letters to transfer by coloring the back with a pencil. Next, I make modifications to the A and the small e on the larger set of letters so I remember how to cut them out. I tape the smaller set of letters to the prepared poster board and the larger set of letters to the double stack of foam core board. Then I begin to trace each letter, remembering only to trace the perimeter of the letter A and lowercase e only on the foam core board. Next, I cut out all of the letters. What I found easiest for me was to use a ruler and a blade on all of the straight cuts, then move on to the curved cuts with either scissors or the blade per the material. The best tips I can give you here is to make sure you have a new or sharp blade and have patience. The end result is always worth the work. And since I didn't follow my own advice and not use a new blade, some of the edges of the foam core were jagged. To remedy that situation, I went around the edges with masking tape. Now, if your edges are smooth and you're happy with the strength of the letters, you can skip this and the next step. Mine weren't, and I was not, so I came up with the following solution. I ended up covering the entire letter with masking tape, and here I have joint compound to apply to the letters to give them more strength once dried. As a side note, I initially reached for Dollar Tree speckling, but when I opened the container, I didn't think I had enough to do all of the letters. So I used joint compound, as this is what I had on hand. So I covered each letter that was made with the foam core board with joint compound and set them aside to dry. Once dry, I sanded each one and gave them a coat of Waverly chalk paint in white. Here I'm showing you I still wasn't satisfied with the strength of the letter E, so I glued a piece of craft stick right down the middle of the arm just for a little bit more support. Next, I used burnt umber by Apple Barrel to distress the letters to resemble the inspiration piece. Next, I glued together 2 4x2 pieces of cardboard and cut the rounded edge off of one larger craft stick from Dollar Tree. Then I painted all sides of each with Waverly chalk paint in white and set them aside to dry. Here I have the paints needed to paint the sign and the letters to resemble the inspiration piece. The smaller letters cut from poster board are already primed with white paint. I mixed each paint with white to lighten their color, and each letter was given 1 coat on the back and 2 on the front, drying in between coats. Next, using a piece of very slightly damp bath sponge, I lightly pounced burnt umber onto the letters. Then I lightly distressed around the edges of the pink sign. Next, I transfer Happy onto the pink sign. As a reminder, links to free printables are in the description box below. Then I use a Sharpie paint pen in black to go over the letters. Here I'm showing you I lightly distressed the craft stick with burnt umber, but I forgot to film it. After the Happy was dry, I glued the craft stick to the back. Next, I made a bird's nest, starting with a scrap piece of nautical rope from Dollar Tree. I forgot to measure, but if I had to guess, I'd say this piece is about 24 to 28 inches long. I started by coiling it at one end and going around in a circular motion. I used this small dip dish to help shape the rope, and gluing the rope to itself, not the actual dish. Now that the base is complete, I use Spanish moss and green moss to glue around it. Birds will use just about anything to make a nest, so if you have some twigs on hand, feel free to use those too. Once complete, I took it outside and gave it a healthy dousing with hairspray to minimize fallout. Next, I apply Pop Dot tape, which is a foam tape, onto the backs of the poster board letters. This will slightly elevate the letters when placed on top of the foam core letters. Now to assemble. First, I apply the nest to the 5-gallon paint stick base. Next, I secure the letters to the base, staggering them similar to the inspiration piece. Next, I adjust the height of the Happy sign and apply a woodcraft cube to the bottom to give it more stability. Then I glue the sign in the bottom of the nest. Here I have some bottle lights that I purchased from Dollar Tree. 5 come on the strand, and this is just enough lights to string around the front of the nest. If the bottle lights aren't available to you, you can use the regular 12 light strand of fairy lights. Just be aware you'll likely have to wrap them around the entire nest and then figure out a way to disguise the battery box. I suggest just laying it behind the nest. After stringing the lights, I glue little pieces of Spanish moss over the exposed wire. Then I stood the power switch behind the Happy sign and stuffed moss around it to keep it stable. I did not glue it in to have easy access to change the batteries. And this dupe is complete. Here's a close-up look of the final project. I have to say I am so proud of how this project came out. It is better than I expected. But I really want to know what you think. How does mine stack up against the original? Leave me a comment below and please press that like button if you enjoyed this video. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and remember, love, inspire, create. See you next time.